Welcome to my Neov Story channel. It was my boyfriend's birthday, and I rushed back from out of town in the rain to surprise him. But I never expected to witness a passionate kiss between him and his female friend right outside the door of the private room at the club. A friend on the side teased, "Liam Johnson, you're playing it so big, aren't you afraid that your Jane Miller will be angry when she finds out?" Liam Johnson looked disdainful. "I'm afraid of her. She's just someone who won't stop chasing after me. If I'm in the mood to tease her, I will. If I'm not, I'll just kick her far away." But when I really wanted to leave, he begged with red eyes and a wagging tail, "Jane, don't go, okay? Our story officially begins. I hope you like it." During a thunderstorm, I drove 380 kilometers back to Jiangcheng, just to celebrate Liam Johnson's 25th birthday. But through the door of the compartment, I saw him kissing Rose Thompson like he was in ecstasy. The cake that I had carefully protected all the way fell to the ground. The floral pattern that I had framed by hand was broken into a mess. Just like my heart at that moment. It could never be put back together again. I knew he was close friends with Rose Thompson, and they usually called each other buddy, but I never imagined that these two would kiss in public. Even though I saw it with my own eyes, I still couldn't believe my own eyes. It wasn't until I heard my friends teasing in the private room. "Liam Johnson, you're playing such a big joke, aren't you afraid that your Jane Miller will be angry when she finds out?" Liam Johnson looked disdainful. "I'm afraid of her. She's just someone who keeps after me. If I want to tease her, I will, and if I don't want to, I will just kick her away." Those few words undoubtedly trampled on my already broken heart, repeatedly stomping on it and pulling at it. My blood ran cold, and even my breathing hurt. I was 15 years old, similar to him, and I was betrothed to him at the age of 18. I considered him my superhero, and indeed, I often followed him around like a puppy for many years. But I never imagined that my admiration would be seen by him as relentless and stalker-like. And I, a lapdog that he can tease at any time. My heart ached densely, like being flogged with thorns, bloody. When I was in a daze from the pain, a clear voice suddenly came from behind me, "Sister-in-law, why aren't you going in?" It was Liam Johnson's brother. With a kind inquiry, he pushed open the door to the box. The noise inside suddenly stopped, and countless pairs of eyes looked at me all at once. There was surprise, embarrassment, and teasing. Some people couldn't help but whisper in each other's ears, betting on whether I had seen Liam Johnson and Rose Thompson kissing. Their murmurs reached Liam Johnson's ears, and he frowned, looking impatient, taking the initiative. "Jane Miller, don't stir up trouble for no reason. We're playing a game, and you have to abide by the rules." What a way to win. What about the hurtful words? Is that also a game? I stared at him with bloodshot eyes. I wanted to find in him the Liam Johnson who, when I was kidnapped 8 years ago, fearlessly protected me from danger and comforted me, assuring me that someone would come to save us. Unfortunately, he hummed lightly, averted his gaze, and continued to smoke, paying no attention to the feelings or situation of his girlfriend. Instead, Rose Thompson, sitting next to him, giggled and chimed in, "Jane, you can join us and have fun too. You lost and kissed someone else, and Liam Johnson won't stop you, will you, Liam Johnson?" My eyes were red, and there was a glimmer of tears in them. I asked him again, not giving up, "Liam Johnson, right?" Liam Johnson bit his cigarette butt, and the smoke blurred his handsome face as he said in a carefree tone, "Of course." The entire box fell silent in an instant, and everyone's eyes were watching the show. Rose Thompson enthusiastically got up and pulled me along. "See, Liam Johnson has already spoken, what are you afraid of? Come, let's have fun together." I sat down in a huff. "Fine, I'll come." Liam Johnson's face obviously changed a bit. I deliberately ignored his glowing gaze and pretended to be heartless, playing with everyone. Rose Thompson wanted to tease me on purpose, wanting to see me make a fool of myself. She winked at the others and set me up to lose, and I saw it all, but I deliberately fell for it. I just wanted to see Liam Johnson's reaction when I lost the game and kissed another man. Could it be that he really didn't care at all? Jane, you lost, Rose Thompson almost jumped up with excitement. Truth or dare, you choose. Liam Johnson remained in his lazy sitting position, but there was a distinct hint of displeasure in his brow. My calm, unruffled gaze swept lightly over him, and I deliberately said loudly, dare. Rose Thompson had been waiting for this moment, and immediately exclaimed excitedly, you are worthy of being Liam's woman, you have courage. How about you find a guy on the spot and kiss him for a minute? I deliberately glanced at Liam Johnson and said faintly, sure, no problem. Liam Johnson's face was purple, his jaw clenched, and it was obvious that his back molars were about to be crushed. I couldn't help but hope that he still cared about me, right? I deliberately looked around the room, choosing the right candidate. All the boys there were Liam Johnson's friends. Even if they had the guts, they wouldn't dare kiss me in front of Liam Johnson. So they all hung their heads, deliberately avoiding my gaze. They were afraid that I would choose them and get implicated. Of course, more people thought I would choose Liam Johnson. They were expecting me to be rejected by him. But just then, the door to the private room suddenly opened. A tall and handsome waiter entered to deliver drinks. I don't know where I got the courage, but I took the opportunity to get up and go forward, and hooked my arm around his neck. Sorry, I lost the game and I need your cooperation. Before I could finish speaking, a strong force came at me, grabbed my thin wrist, and rudely pulled me out of the box. Before the door was closed, I clearly heard someone say, see, Liam still cares about his sister-in-law. I was filled with joy and hope. I foolishly thought that he cared about me. But when he threw me hard, and my thin and fragile body slammed against the cold wall, I knew that I had been deluding myself and had been imagining things. He was full of anger, pointed his finger at my nose, and yelled, Jane Miller, why are you like this? If you're a man, just do it, and don't be afraid of getting an infection. The hope I had kindled was instantly extinguished by these heart-stabbing words, and I was left feeling cold to the core. My eyes were red, my neck stiff, and I defiantly questioned him, why is it okay for you, but not for me? Isn't it said that you have to honor your bets? Liam Johnson's eyebrows sank, and a flash of determination flashed in his eyes. Can you compare with me? Rose and I grew up together, we know each other inside and out, you just pick any guy and kiss him, you have no shame. I laughed in complete exasperation. So you're saying that just because you know someone well, you can do whatever you like? I pulled my phone out of my pocket and deliberately provoked him, I'll call Kevin Brown right now. We went to school together, so I know him pretty well. Liam Johnson was infuriated. He reached for my phone and cursed at me, calling me crazy. I was crazy. I had traveled thousands of miles to be here for my boyfriend's birthday, but he was playing video games and kissing another girl. Who wouldn't go crazy when they saw that? The emotions that had been suppressed for a long time all rushed to my mind at this moment. I desperately protected the phone and refused to let go. While we were struggling, he suddenly exerted a strong force, and I stumbled as he pushed me, accidentally bumping into the waitress behind me who was delivering drinks. Pop! The drinks shattered on the floor, and the glass shards scattered. I sat down with a loud fart, and some of the shards pierced my calf. The piercing pain came, and a cold sweat immediately covered my entire back. I gasped, and subconsciously let out a hiss. Liam Johnson was also obviously panicking, and a trace of worry crossed his brow. Jane, are you okay? He walked quickly towards me, and pretended to help me up. My heart softened. I thought to myself that I couldn't blame him entirely for this, and that it was me who insisted on fighting with him. As long as he properly admitted his mistake to me and promised to pay attention to boundaries with Rose Thompson in the future, I would forgive him. After all, we have been together for so many years. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Terribly wrong. Rose Thompson came out of the box and exclaimed, "Liam Johnson, we're going to play scripted killing, are you in?" Without a second thought, he happily agreed, "Yes." I gritted my teeth and endured the pain as he turned back to look deeply into Rose Thompson's eyes, and then with great effort, I stood up from the ground. I didn't need him to help me. I didn't want to walk with him anymore. Liam Johnson turned his eyes away, saw that I had already stood up, and resumed his indifferent expression. He gave me a cold look, put his hands in his pockets, and snorted condescendingly, "Do you want to come along?" I shook my head. "No, you guys go ahead and have fun." Liam Johnson had always found me uninteresting, shook his head, and left, saying he loved it or not. I stared at his back as he ran towards Rose Thompson, and opened my mouth, almost trembling as I said, "Liam Johnson." He turned back at me with extreme impatience and glared at me. "What now?" I smiled at him and said, "Happy birthday." He looked at me fixedly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he was dragged away by Rose Thompson in a flurry. "Hurry up, everyone is waiting for you." "Little girl, don't look, it's not worth it for that kind of scum." My thoughts as I ran away with Liam Johnson were forcibly dragged back to reality by a clear female voice. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw a young lady with a heroic appearance and cool short hair, wearing a cool outfit, leaning lazily against the side, looking at me with arms folded. The bubblegum in her mouth was blown up by her. Her carefree and casual posture made people jealous. "Let's go, don't just stand there, I'll take you to the hospital," she said, and came forward to help me. My eyes welled up with tears. Even a passerby could tell I was hurt, but Liam Johnson left me behind and went off with his buddies. What an irony. I had wanted to refuse the kind offer of Miss Shorthair. But she was very forceful. She wouldn't let go of my arm, and led me all the way from the club to the hospital, where she hailed a taxi for us. The whole process was so smooth that I didn't have a chance to refuse. By the time we left the hospital after getting my wound dressed, we were already having a lively conversation, and it felt like we had known each other for ages. Her name is Lynn Taylor, and she plays in a band. I suggested that we go out for dinner, and she didn't say no. We found a nearby hot pot restaurant and ate and talked. She complained about her family, and I told her about my problems with Liam Johnson. We got a little tipsy from the conversation. We didn't drink, but we were even more excited than if we had. She pounded on the table, "Next time I see him bully you, I won't let him get away with it." I grinned at her and giggled. As I laughed, tears came to my eyes. A girl I had just met a few hours ago was defending me so fiercely. How could the man who once said he would protect me for the rest of his life have changed? I couldn't help but start to examine myself. Is it that I haven't done enough to show him my care and love? Or is it that my personality is too boring and he finds it uninteresting? Should I learn to change my old-fashioned personality and try to be a bit more lively? After this internal debate, I picked up my phone and decided to send Liam Johnson a message and find some time to have a good chat with him. After all, after so many years of relationship, it's not as simple as just letting go. What's more, we had already been engaged. If we're not together, it's not as simple as breaking up. I hesitated, silently organizing my words in my heart, thinking about what to send him. What a coincidence. Just then, I saw Rose Thompson's just posted moments, presumably the characters in the scripted killing of the two. She was wearing a white wedding dress, Liam Johnson was wearing a sharp suit, and the two of them were embracing each other, gazing deeply into each other's eyes. The caption read, "For the one you love, the kiss should be deep, the embrace real." What does this mean is self-evident. My fingers trembled as I held the phone, and my whole body was shaking. Only my heart was like a pool of stagnant water. I no longer had the slightest desire to reconcile with him. Lynn Taylor had just dropped me off at home when Liam Johnson called. His tone was quite rude. "I can't drive after drinking, come pick me up." Not to mention that I hurt my leg and had difficulty walking. Even if I hadn't been injured, judging from his behavior today, I would never lick his boots again. I said coldly, "I can't go, find someone else." This was the first time I had rejected him in all the years I had known him. Needless to say, it felt pretty good. But he couldn't stand it and went crazy on the phone. He yelled, "Jane Miller, that's enough, don't push your luck. There are plenty of people who want to be my girlfriend, Liam Johnson, and since you're in this position, you should do what you're supposed to do." I couldn't hold back and laughed. I said lightly, "Then let someone else do it. I don't care anyway." This seemed to have hit the nail on the head, and he became enraged and spoke without thinking. "Jane Miller, don't forget, your grandmother is still in our hospital. If you don't mind watching her stop treatment, don't come." I held my breath, and then a chill shot up from the soles of my feet. He actually threatened me with my grandmother? An indescribable emotion welled up in my heart, and I fell into self-doubt. After 8 years, do I really know him? You have to know that 8 years ago, he was kidnapped as the young master of a wealthy family, and I was involved because I was passing by. But my grandmother saved him because she was looking for me. That's why the Johnson family was willing to let him get engaged to me. They were repaying a debt of gratitude. But he repaid the favor with hatred. I found it hard to accept, and for a moment I turned pale and was dispirited. He was not giving up, and said in a harsh voice, "Jane Miller, I'll give you one last chance, don't come if you don't want to." I couldn't hold back the tears, and my voice trembled as I said, I'll go. Liam Johnson snorted in annoyance and hung up the phone mercilessly. What was cut off together was the last bit of affection I had left for him. When I appeared at the door of the script-killing shop with a limp, Liam Johnson was acting as a big horse for Rose Thompson. She was lying on his back, one hand around his neck, the other waving a whip, while she kept saying, "Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up." When she saw me, she pretended to panic and slid off Liam Johnson's back. With a smirk, she explained to me, "We were just having fun." I didn't say anything. What happened to them was no longer my business. Rose Thompson was not giving up, and immediately pretended to be concerned about me. "Jane, what happened to your leg?" Liam Johnson glanced at my leg at the sound of her voice, just a quick glance, and snorted, "Afraid I'll break her grandmother's treatment." Pretending to be pitiful, isn't that just a show? Even though I was already disappointed with him. When I heard these words, my heart still couldn't help but ache. Shock, pain, and disbelief. All intertwined in my eyes. I just quietly looked at him. We were clearly so close. But he felt so foreign to me. So incredibly foreign. In the midst of my daze, Liam Johnson suddenly threw the car keys at me. I was not at all prepared for this, and they landed squarely on my shoulder, before eventually falling to the ground. I let out a cry of pain and frowned slightly. But he muttered angrily, "Idiot." I didn't say anything, and silently crouched down to pick up the car keys that had fallen to the ground. The bandaged wound seemed to have opened up due to the large movement, and the searing pain surged, instantly assaulting my entire body. It took a while for the pain to subside before I managed to stand up. By this time, Liam Johnson, who had already got into the car, was impatiently urging me on. "What are you doing? Hurry up, I'm sleepy." I forced myself to sit in the driver's seat, where Rose Thompson happened to be lying on Liam Johnson's lap. She was loudly complaining, "I'm sleepy, I'm going to lie on your lap and take a nap." I don't know if Liam Johnson was deliberately trying to annoy me, but he raised his eyelids and gave me a glance. Perhaps he saw that I was cold and unresponsive, and instead of pushing Rose Thompson away, he took the initiative to take off his jacket. Cover up a bit, don't catch a cold. The intimate look really looked like a sweet and loving couple. Even I, the official girlfriend, couldn't help but feel like a sugar rush when I saw it. Dragging my bloody leg, I started the car and slowly got on the road. Every now and then, I could hear giggles and playful noises coming from the back seat, but I turned a deaf ear to them and automatically blocked them out. I don't know if it was because I didn't react much along the way that they couldn't get a rise out of me. After Rose Thompson got off the car at her home, she leaned in through the car window, took the initiative to hook Liam Johnson's neck, and gave him a hard kiss on the cheek. Good night. After saying that, she gave me a smug wave and said, Jane, you worked hard today. I remained calm and responded indifferently, that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if that sentence offended Liam Johnson again, and he suddenly changed his face, cut the crap, hurry up and drive. I obediently started the car and got back on the road. It was Rose Thompson who, looking in the rearview mirror, froze in place for a long time. Rose has been abroad for a long time, and her actions and mannerisms are more open. Halfway through the road, he suddenly blurted out this sentence, which startled me. I was stunned for a moment before I reacted, and he was making excuses for the kiss through the window just now. I couldn't help but let out a light laugh, with a hint of mockery curling the corners of my lips. That's quite nice. Liam Johnson felt extremely uncomfortable at the surprisingly calm tone of voice, and it felt a bit like punching a bag. He was stifled and annoyed. His brow furrowed in the second half of the journey, almost twisting into a knot. If this were in the past, I would have made faces and coaxed him with words at the sight of his sulking. But now, I'm tired. It doesn't matter what expression he has. The luxury car arrived at the Kings Ridge Villa. I parked the car and handed Liam Johnson the car keys. He didn't reach for them, but instead suddenly leaned over, pushing me against the car, his burning gaze like flames, staring straight at me. He was handsome, especially those eyes, deep and charming. Every time he stares at me like that, I can't help but blush and my heart pounds. Even after knowing him for 8 years and being in love with him for 5, I still can't resist his ardent provocations. Even though my heart is already dead towards him at this moment, I tremble my long eyelashes furiously and feel at a loss as he suddenly closes in on me. I unconsciously gulp. You. I subconsciously reach out and rest my hand on his chest to try to stop him from getting any closer. But he suddenly laughed, with 2 small dimples blooming on his lips, exuding an inexplicable sense of charm. My heartbeat quietly became chaotic, and my ears blushed uncharacteristically. He said, Jane, you still haven't given me a birthday present. The present was in addition to the handmade cake, and there was also a pair of silver rings. I also went to the silver jewelry store and picked them out myself. The 2 plain circles clearly had our initials engraved on them. I foolishly wanted him to hold me in the palm of his hand at all times. He feels the same way about me. Now it seems like a complete joke. So even if I worked hard for several days, I have no intention of bringing it out again. I lowered my eyes, expressionless, calm like a wooden man without emotions. The cake that broke at the entrance of the box was the gift. He was stunned at first, and then a complex emotion flashed in his eyes. He raised his hand and touched my head. It's okay, the best gift for me is already here. Look, what a sweet thing to say. If this were the old days, I would have happily thrown myself into his arms, hugged him tightly, and wouldn't let go. But now, it just sounds ironic. How can someone be so mean one minute, and so affectionate the next? Ignoring the lust in his eyes, I pushed him away and limped into the night. By the time he reacted and chased after me, I had already gotten into the pre-ordered online car service and ignored his desperate calls at the window. Driver, let's go. My ignorance angered Liam Johnson. After I left, he called me a dozen times. I was exhausted and had no energy to deal with it, so I simply turned off my phone. This didn't matter, but it completely irritated that lunatic. He actually called the hospital and asked them to stop treating my grandmother, saying that he wanted to teach me a lesson and make me remember my place. When I turned on my phone the next day and got the message from the hospital, my grandmother was already in the resuscitation room. The man who held the power of life and death over my grandmother had already boarded a plane to an island abroad with his best buddy Rose Thompson. When I rushed to the hospital, my grandmother was on her last breath. "Jane," she called out to me silently. Crying my eyes out, I knelt before her and shook her hand. My parents divorced when I was young, and soon after they each formed new families. Neither of them wanted me. While I was being kicked around like a football, my grandmother stepped in. "If you don't want me, I'll be raised by you." No one knew what it meant when Grandma took me into her arms. At that moment, I secretly vowed to take good care of Grandma when I grew up. But now, I've become the culprit who killed her. If I hadn't angered that lunatic Liam Johnson, Grandma wouldn't have felt such hatred in her chest. I hate Liam Johnson and I hate myself. I lay on my grandmother's chest, unable to stop sobbing. "Grandma, please don't leave me, don't. Why is the heavens so cruel, even taking away my last remaining relative?" "Jane," Grandma raised her hand with difficulty, stroked the back of my head as she had when I was little. "Don't hate Liam Johnson, don't hate anyone. If it weren't for the Johnson family, with Grandma's illness, she wouldn't have lasted until now. Grandma is already very happy to have been able to spend so many years with our Jane. Our Jane is now outstanding and capable, and even if Grandma leaves, she can rest assured. Grandma knows everything." I cried even harder. The world's best grandma, even at this time, is still thinking of others. I cried my heart out. I wished I could trade my life for Grandma's long life. "Jane," Grandma called out to me with difficulty, her eyes bright with tears. "Grandma, I'm here, I'm listening." Grandma's dry hands gripped mine tightly, and with a weak gasp, she told me intermittently, "If you want to be separated from Liam Johnson, Grandma supports you. Grandma, I just want you to be well and happy, okay?" My eyes were full of tears, and I nodded desperately. I begged Grandma not to go. I begged the doctors around her to try to resuscitate her. I begged God to let me shorten my life in exchange for Grandma's. Unfortunately, no one answered me. Grandma was gone. In the midst of my heart-wrenching cries, she just left me alone and walked away. The helpless feeling of being kicked around when I was little came flooding back. I cried until I almost fainted. The medical staff by my side were moved by my situation. They helped me up and comforted me, telling me that people cannot be brought back to life and that I had to look forward. Someone also secretly called Liam Johnson. Unfortunately, the phone was constantly busy. At this point, it didn't matter to me whether he came back or not. Even if he did, I would only feel hatred for him. Johnson family. The parents learned about what happened to their grandmother. They rushed to the hospital as soon as they could. They scolded Liam Johnson for his ridiculous behavior. They took my hand and said that the Johnson family would take responsibility for this matter and give me an explanation. I shook my head. "Uncle, Aunt, Grandma told us not to do anything fancy, just bury her in her hometown of Kingmission. So I can take care of the funeral arrangements myself, so you don't need to worry. As for my marriage to Liam Johnson," I choked up. Liam's mother was full of anxiety, trying to persuade me, "Jane, Liam Johnson is an inconsiderate boy, and when he returns, I will definitely scold him, but can you?" I shook my head. "Auntie, we are destined to be separated. Continuing on this path will not do either of us any good. So I hope you two can respect my wishes and end this engagement. I was firm in my attitude, and they wanted to say something, but they didn't know what to say. In the end, they could only exhort me with a face full of guilt. He is he, we are we. You break off with him, but you mustn't ignore us. I pulled the corners of my mouth and said with pain, I will come back to visit you all when I have time in the future. I took my grandmother's ashes and returned to Qingmishan. I chose the widest piece of land on the hilltop. Grandma spent most of her life here. It still stands on the top of the hill, guarding the small village. I lay on the grass in front of the tombstone, feeling the gentle breeze, looking at the blue sky and the soft clouds. I couldn't help but whisper, Grandma, I will live a good life and never let you down. Grandma, I will miss you. I received another call from Liam Johnson half a month later. He and Rose Thompson had returned from abroad, and asked me to pick them up at the airport. I listened quietly to his unreasonable request and only sent him a sentence. Liam Johnson, our marriage has been cancelled, and I am no longer obliged to serve you in the future. You can find whoever you like. Who agreed to it? Jane Miller, your courage is getting bigger and bigger now. Did you ask for my consent to cancel the marriage? Now you are really used to being lawless, aren't you? I order you to come to the airport immediately. Don't blame me if you are late. Heh. I laughed. No thanks. How is that possible? My only weak point is gone, so what is he going to use to force me to give in now? I didn't bother to waste any more words with him, so I hung up the phone directly and added his number to the blacklist. This was the second time I had hung up on Liam Johnson. His just-adjusted mentality had collapsed again. In a rage, he called the hospital again and ordered them to stop treating his grandmother. The director was shocked and cold with fear, and explained with a trembling voice, Young master, the Miller family matriarch passed away half a month ago. Liam Johnson's face suddenly turned pale. What do you mean passed away? The director was scared and whispered, She passed away. What? He felt his legs give way, and before he knew it, he was kneeling at the international exit of the airport. He was shocked, and he refused to believe what he had heard. What did you say? Say it again. Rose Thompson, who was standing next to him, had never seen him act like this before. She instinctively reached out to help him. But he violently shook her off. Get out. Get out. Rose Thompson was shocked by his sudden outburst. She was in tears, feeling aggrieved, not knowing why he had suddenly become like this. Then, like a madman, he rushed into the crowd, grabbed a car and drove recklessly to the Johnson family's hospital. He went straight to his grandmother's ward, but when he opened the door, it was empty. The bed was empty. He grabbed the first person he saw and asked, Where is she? Where is the person in this room? Everyone was terrified by his crazed behavior. In the end, the hospital director had to notify the Johnsons before they could get him to leave. Even though everyone told him that his grandmother had passed away. He jumped out of the window of his house to look for me, and ran down to my apartment building to block my path. I happened to be returning from the real estate agency with Lynn Taylor, and we ran into each other. When he saw me, he ran over and fell to his knees in front of me. Jane, I'm sorry, he cried, slapping himself furiously. It's all my fault, I'm not a human being, I shouldn't have let the hospital. He couldn't even bring himself to finish the sentence. He grabbed the hem of my skirt and bitterly confessed, Jane, I'm sorry I was wrong, I deeply regret it, please forgive me this once. Lynn Taylor couldn't bear to watch anymore, and tightly took me in her protective embrace. Stop pretending. Liam Johnson realized that the person was a girl only after he heard a voice. After he returned home on his birthday, Rose Thompson sent him a video of Jane Miller and a trendy guy arm in arm. He was upset, so in a fit of anger he called the hospital and made an irrational decision. Now that he knows the truth, he is jealous and mad that it was a girl who drove him crazy. He cried and laughed, regretting his actions. If you really loved Jane Miller, you wouldn't have pushed her after she got hurt on your birthday, and then left immediately after the guy flirted with you. And you wouldn't have let her go out in the middle of the night to pick you up after she hurt her leg, you irresponsible couple. Recalling what happened that night, Liam Johnson trembled and bent over completely. He remembered that night, the way she limped. Rose Thompson asked her what was wrong, and he said in a strange voice that she was faking it. The truth was laid out before him in a bloody mess, his eyes red, his heart aching so much that he could hardly breathe. His hands trembled as he gently lifted the hem of her long skirt to her ankles. A hideous scar was clearly visible on her pale, straight leg. His whole body stiffened. He almost lost the ability to speak and move. He remained motionless in this position. After a long time, he asked with a trembling voice, "Does it still hurt?" I shook my head with a smile. No matter how much this wound hurts, how can it compare to the pain of losing my grandmother? He suddenly got up and ran away like crazy. This sudden move took Lynn Taylor and me by surprise. She stared. "No, you can't live here anymore. Who knows if this crazy person will come again? You'll move in with me tonight." I refused Lynn Taylor's kind offer. "I'll be careful. Just for 2 nights. I need to pack." I had already entrusted the house to an agent and would be selling it soon. With my grandmother gone, there was nothing left for me in this city. Coincidentally, I had an assignment overseas at work, and after I finished arranging things here, I would leave soon. Once I was gone, I would probably never come back. Lynn Taylor could not be persuaded, and she shouted that she would not leave tonight and would stay with me. She also said that when that lunatic came to harass me again, she would make him pay for his actions. She was so lovely. She added a lot of fun and warmth to my grief-stricken life after losing my grandmother. I am very fortunate to have met such a friend as her. An hour later, Liam Johnson came again. He knocked on the door, and threw a box of scar-removing ointment at me. With bloodshot eyes and panting heavily, he promised me, "Jane, don't worry, I will definitely find a way to help you remove the scar on your leg." I looked at him with extraordinary calm and asked in a soft voice, "And how do you plan to heal the scar in your heart?" He was stunned and deeply shocked. Suddenly, he produced a fruit knife from nowhere and held it firmly against his neck. In a state of emotional agitation, he said in a paranoid and deranged manner, "Jane, if I give you back my grandmother's life, will you forgive me?" "I'll give you back Grandma's life, okay?" This was a Liam Johnson I had never seen before. Desperate, out of control, paranoid, and crazy. I was afraid he might really do something crazy in my house, so I gave Lynn Taylor a secret wink and told her to call the police. Soon, the police arrived. The Johnson family parents also came. They took away the crazy Liam Johnson and said a lot of apologetic things to me. Before leaving, my aunt asked me tentatively, "Jane, is there really no hope for you and Liam Johnson?" I answered noncommittally, "Auntie, go home and get some rest." My aunt nodded regretfully and said, "If you need any help in the future, you can call us at any time. We will do our best if we can." "Thank you, Auntie." I thought that after this incident, I would never have any contact with Liam Johnson again in my life. But I was wrong. He even chased after me to the city where my project was located. He spent whole days holding flowers and waiting for me outside my office. People passing by said he was a hopeless romantic. Only I knew how cold-hearted he really was. Many of my colleagues knew that he was waiting for me and couldn't help but advise me kindly. What perseverance! Maybe you should give him a chance. I shook my hair and walked past him, deliberately telling him, "You don't know, He's used to putting on an act, don't be fooled by his appearance. Back then, he said I was used to playing the poor, trying to gain sympathy. Now, I'm sending these words to him exactly as they were. I just don't know how he felt after hearing them. Johnson family came to visit. They dragged him, like a dead pig, into the car. Afterwards, they said, Liam's father gave him a good beating with a whip. You have the weight of the whole family on your shoulders, are you just going to keep moping like this? You didn't cherish Jane when she was here, and now you're acting like this to who? Don't even mention Jane, I can't even look at you now. Useless thing, you've completely disgraced the Johnson family. From then on, he was completely awakened. He stopped being depressed and never bothered me again. He joined the Johnson family company and worked his way up from the bottom. He was smart and had a good head on his shoulders, so he naturally made a name for himself quickly by focusing on his work. Everyone in the company was afraid of him. Even Rose Thompson, who had once been close friends with him, now trembled when she saw him. She said, Liam Johnson, you've changed. You've become someone who is unapproachable. A person who has broken off all relationships naturally rejects others, so how could they be as close as before? 3 years later, I met a guy from a branch office. He was average looking and in no way comparable to Liam Johnson in any way. But we shared the same outlook on life and had similar interests. He could provide me with emotional value, and I could appreciate his difficulties. After careful consideration, we decided to enter into marriage. On the day of the wedding, all of our family and friends were there. Standing under the crystal chandelier, I was very surprised to catch a glimpse of a familiar figure. Liam Johnson was also there. I don't know how long he had been there. And I don't know how long he stared at me. But when I was beaming with happiness and said I do to the groom, he couldn't hold back a retch and vomited blood. He was then forcibly taken away from the scene by his assistant. I don't care about the outcome anymore. We have never met since then.